The first snowfall of December draped itself across the valley like nature's own quilt. In a small cabin nestled between ancient evergreens, amber firelight flickered through frost-kissed windows. This was Eleanor's sanctuary, a place where time moved slowly, measured only by the crackling of burning wood and the gentle tick of an old grandfather clock. Eleanor settled into her favorite chair, a hand-knit shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her white hair caught the glow from the hearth, giving her an almost ethereal appearance. She was alone, but not for long. Her grandson Daniel had called earlier saying he needed somewhere quiet to think. She'd simply told him the door was open. 23 years old now, Daniel carried himself with a quiet strength that reminded Eleanor of her late husband, Samuel. But when he arrived that evening, something was different. His usual easy smile seemed forced, and those kind eyes, so much like Samuel's, carried the weight of unspoken troubles. They sat together in comfortable silence at first. Eleanor had learned long ago that the loudest cries for help often came without words. She poured 2 cups of hot cider, adding the cinnamon stick she knew he loved. "You haven't said much since you arrived," she finally ventured, her voice soft as snowfall. Daniel looked up from the dancing flames. "Just sorting through some things in my head, Gran." Eleanor nodded knowingly. The head has a way of getting crowded when the heart has something to say. A faint smile crossed his face, but still he hesitated. The fire popped and hissed, filling the spaces between them. Finally, he set down his cup. "Can I tell you something? It's complicated." "Life usually is," Eleanor replied gently, "but that's never stopped us from talking about it." He took a deep breath. "I've met someone important," Eleanor's face brightened. "That's wonderful news, dear." "It's not that straightforward," he continued, his voice dropping. "She's older than me." Significantly older, the room grew still. Eleanor didn't flinch or show surprise. She simply waited. "How much older are we talking?" she asked evenly. "Nearly 20 years. The words came out barely above a whisper. Eleanor leaned back, her expression thoughtful rather than troubled. "And how does she make you feel?" Daniel's eyes met hers. "Like I can finally breathe. Like someone actually hears me, but I'm terrified. Gran. Terrified of what people will think, of being judged, of losing something before it even has a chance to grow." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, memories of her own youth stirring in the corners of her mind. "You know," she said slowly, "love rarely arrives when we expect it, and it almost never looks the way society tells us it should. But that doesn't diminish its truth." "So you don't think I'm making a mistake?" "The only mistake," Eleanor said gently, "would be walking away from something real because you're afraid of opinions that don't matter. The question isn't whether others will understand. It's whether what you feel is genuine, something built on respect, honesty, and mutual care." Daniel exhaled, his shoulders relaxing for the first time all evening. "It is real, Gran. When I'm with her, everything makes sense." "Then that's your answer." Eleanor smiled. "But remember, love isn't just about how someone makes you feel. It's about who you become when you're with them, and whether you both grow toward something better." They talked late into the night, the fire gradually burning lower. Daniel spoke about how they'd met. This woman named Sophia who worked at the community center, who'd helped him find purpose during a difficult season. He described her warmth, her wisdom, the way she listened without judgment. Before he headed upstairs to sleep, Daniel paused. "Gran, have you ever loved someone the world said you shouldn't?" Eleanor's hand stilled on the arm of her chair. The question touched something deep and long buried. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "A lifetime ago." "What happened?" She smiled, though her eyes held distant sadness. "That's a story for another evening, dear. Get some rest now." Morning arrived with brilliant sunshine sparkling across the snow-covered landscape. Eleanor stood at the kitchen window, watching light dance across the frozen meadow. Daniel's words from the night before still echoed in her thoughts. Over breakfast, they spoke of lighter things, old memories, family stories, the simple rhythm of daily life. But Eleanor could sense there was more Daniel wanted to share. After they'd finished eating, he reached into his jacket. "I wrote something," he said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "About everything I've been feeling. I'd like you to read it." Eleanor unfolded the letter carefully. Daniel had always been a writer, even as a child. But this was different, raw, honest, vulnerable. He wrote about meeting Sophia, about their conversations that stretched from books to life itself. He described the peace he found in her presence, but also his fear of a world that might never accept them. When Eleanor finished, she set the letter down gently. "This is beautiful, Daniel. Every word rings true. You really think so?" "I know so," she assured him. "You've written about love in its purest form. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that exists in quiet understanding. That's rare and precious." Daniel looked relieved but still uncertain. "I wanted you to know because you've never lied to me. I couldn't keep this hidden from you." Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm grateful you shared it. But I want you to understand something. A love like this will face challenges. You'll need strength most people never have to find." "I know," he whispered. "But Gran, she changed everything for me. I can't just walk away." Eleanor gazed out the window, her mind drifting to her own past. "When I was younger," she began softly, "I knew someone who made me feel truly alive. He was a craftsman who came to town to restore the old lighthouse. We shared moments of connection I'd never experienced before. But circumstances kept us apart. Different paths, different obligations. He eventually left, and I never saw him again." Daniel leaned forward, surprised. "You never mentioned this." "Some memories stay private until the right moment arrives," Eleanor said. "What I learned is that love takes many forms. Sometimes it stays, sometimes it teaches us and moves on. But it always leaves something behind." They sat in reflective silence, the winter light streaming through the windows. "Thank you for trusting me," Eleanor finally said. "Whatever happens, don't let anyone make you ashamed of what you feel. Just ensure that your love brings out the best in both of you. That's how you'll know it's worth holding on to." 2 days later, an unexpected knock came at the door. Daniel looked out the window and his expression shifted. "It's Sophia," Eleanor nodded encouragingly. "Then let her in from the cold." The woman who stepped inside had auburn hair touched with silver, intelligent eyes, and a quiet grace about her. Despite her obvious nervousness, there was strength in her presence. "I'm so sorry to arrive unannounced," Sophia said, brushing snow from her coat. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Eleanor replied warmly. "Any friend of Daniel's is welcome here. Please sit by the fire." They settled around the hearth, an unspoken tension hanging in the air. Not uncomfortable, but charged with significance. Sophia spoke first. "Daniel told you about us?" "He did," Eleanor confirmed gently. "I needed to come," Sophia continued, her voice steady but vulnerable. "After our last conversation, Daniel, I couldn't stop thinking. You've been so honest with me about your feelings. I owed you the same honesty." She turned slightly toward Eleanor. "I know this situation isn't conventional. I've lived long enough to know how people judge what they don't understand. But when I think about him, I don't feel doubt. I feel certainty." Daniel's expression softened. "That's exactly how I feel, too." Eleanor observed them both carefully. She could see this wasn't fleeting infatuation. These were two people who'd found genuine connection despite, or perhaps because of, their different life experiences. "You remind me of something important," Eleanor said thoughtfully. "Real connection transcends circumstances. It's not about numbers or timelines. It's about honesty, respect, and mutual understanding." Sophia's eyes glistened. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you could know." As the afternoon unfolded, Eleanor watched them talk. Really talk. Daniel spoke of his struggles to find his place in the world. Sophia listened with the kind of presence that comes from truly caring. There was no pretense between them, no performance. Just two souls finding comfort in being seen. When the storm outside intensified, Sophia prepared to leave. Daniel walked her to her car while Eleanor watched from the window. She saw the tender way they said goodbye. Respectful, careful, but unmistakably affectionate. When Daniel returned, his face held a new clarity. "She's visiting family for a few days, but she said she'd call when she's back." Eleanor nodded. "Give her space. Let things unfold naturally. Don't rush what's already meaningful." That night, after Daniel had gone to bed, Eleanor sat alone by the dying fire. She reached for an old photo album, running her fingers across its worn cover. Inside, she tucked Daniel's letter next to a faded photograph of herself as a young woman, standing near the old lighthouse. On the back of her photo, written in her own handwriting from decades past, were the words, "Love never truly ends." It simply transforms, Eleanor smiled softly, whispering to the empty room. Love finds its way, even when the path seems impossible. She pulled her shawl tighter and closed her eyes, the firelight painting gentle shadows across her peaceful face. The following days passed in quiet contentment. Winter deepened, but inside Eleanor's home, warmth prevailed, not just from the fire, but from understanding and acceptance. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Daniel spoke thoughtfully. Gran, Sophia said something before she left that's been staying with me. What was that? She said sometimes people enter our lives not to stay forever, but to remind us what it means to be truly seen. Eleanor nodded slowly, emotion tightening in her chest. That's a profound truth. I don't know what the future holds, Daniel continued, but she taught me to stop hiding from life, to stop being afraid of feeling deeply. That's the greatest gift anyone can give, Eleanor replied. The courage to keep living authentically. She stood and retrieved a small wooden box from a cabinet, polished smooth by years of handling. This belonged to your grandfather, she said, handing it to Daniel. He gave it to me on our 10th anniversary. I think it's time you understood what it means. Inside, Daniel found an old photograph and a letter. He began reading aloud. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, we've reached another winter together. I hope the fire is warm and your heart is full. Remember this always, love doesn't fade, it echoes. Sometimes softly, sometimes from a distance, but it never truly leaves us. Daniel's voice caught. Eleanor's eyes shimmered in the firelight. He wrote that the winter before he passed, she explained softly. I've carried those words with me ever since. Love changes form, moves forward through the people we care about. That's what he meant. The room fell into sacred silence. Then, unexpectedly, another knock came at the door. Daniel opened it to find Sophia standing there, snow dusting her shoulders. I was on my way home, she said, but something told me to stop. I didn't want to leave things uncertain. Come in, Eleanor called warmly. You're just in time. Sophia stepped inside, her eyes meeting Daniel's. I thought about what you said, about not running from what feels real, and I decided life's too short for hesitation. They sat by the fire together, the same place where understanding had first taken root. But now the air between them held something new, not confusion, but clarity. Eleanor settled back into her chair, content to simply witness what was unfolding. She could feel Samuel's words resonating in her heart. Love doesn't fade. It echoes. And tonight, she could hear that echo in the quiet conversation and gentle laughter of the two people beside her. As the clock struck midnight and the fire burned low, Eleanor whispered to herself, Yes, Samuel, love truly does echo. Outside, stars pierced the winter darkness. Inside, warmth remained, steady, enduring, infinite. The story wasn't ending. It was simply transforming, passing from one generation to the next, teaching each heart something new about courage, acceptance, and the unexpected paths love takes. And in that small cabin, surrounded by snow and silence, 3 souls had found what they'd been searching for: understanding, connection, and the freedom to love without fear.